I can't quite see Emmanuel Macron intimidating Boris Johnson. He's not a man that's easily intimidated, is he?
I don't know. I mean, I think that Macron realises that his votes and his poll ratings go up every time he's not very nice to the Brits. He's got to think about his own elections. He's got to think about what works for him and his country. And he's run out of patience. In terms of what Brexit is massive to us. It's dominated our airwaves, it's dominated our TV screens. We don't talk about anything else, right? It's kept us all in jobs, Mike, so don't worry about that. But, over the other side of the pond, Macron has other things to worry about. And he sees Brexit as a real annoyance. And he also thinks that, well, you know what? We think we might benefit from you guys going out with a no deal. Yes, they might suffer in some quarters, but they can also try and attract more business, more trade, etc., therein. So I think they're coming around to the idea, which is, you know what, we're not going to bend over backwards here for the Brits. We've kind of had enough of them.
Well, also, they don't want it to be too successful for us, though, do they? Because in the end, that will then backfire on the European Union as a construct, because the Italians are now sort of wavering a little bit. It looks as if they're going to have a new election. And if the populists get in, they could be making noises about a referendum to leave the European Union as well.
This is the thing, right? There's never going to be an opportunity where people outside the club can benefit with have better benefits than those within the club, because otherwise the club doesn't work anymore. And so, of course, Macron is going to protect all that he knows, all that he's invested in. He's facing the same problem with this wave across Europe, which is a rise of, we're not happy with our lot. We don't like unelected people telling us what to do. We don't like giving our billions to people and them telling us how we can spend our own money that we've hard earned at work and we're giving away. And so he's facing the same pressure in France. He sees it that in the UK and in the US, we've given in to that pressure. He is fighting that good fight, as he likes to think it is, in his country, and therefore he will not want to bend over backwards, because that's almost like, you know, waving the white flag in his own country as well.
Well, quite. And I mean, we were saying yesterday, you know, it's hard to tell at the moment with Boris whether he's operating as a man trying to please everybody or whether he's looking like he's trying to please everybody, i.e., you know, I was asking the question yesterday, why is he bothering going to see these European leaders when we know pretty much they're not going to give us much back? And he's pretty much decided that he wants a no deal anyway, even though he says that he would quite like to get a deal. Is he just trying to keep everybody at bay, if you like, from trying to make an attack on him or an attack on his prime ministership?
Well, that's the key in the art of politics, right? You've got to keep everybody rowing in the right direction, even if they don't quite agree with the way that you decided to row the boat. And I think that's a bit of Boris Johnson's strategy. I think he's doing an excellent job of it, actually. I think his communications, you know, being a former communications director at Number 10, I've looked at, you know, from afar and thought to myself, how well is it going for them, really? It's going really well. The polls are up. The way they're landing their key messages, they've chosen retail policies, they've kicked off an election campaign in all but name. And they are landing those at home with people who think, yes, I do want more police officers. Yes, I am cross about the fact that, you know, people are not doing quite what they said they're going to do. And this is a politician that hopefully will be stuck with his promises. Now, of course, I think that the foreign trips over to Brussels and elsewhere is the start of a blame game. The key message will be, it is not us in the UK at Number 10 who prevented us from getting a deal. It was the inflexible, stubborn, you know, protecting their own interests rather than us Europeans. And this is the start of the blame game. And of course, Macron and Merkel know that, and that's why they are responding in that way. And depending on what newspapers you read today, and depending what you listen to, there is, you know, varying degrees of what Merkel meant when she said, you know, you've got 30 days. Please do come up with an alternative. I think she meant at no point in the last couple of years have the Brits come up with exactly what they want. They've just turned down what we've suggested. And so you've got time, it's running out, you've got time to tell us exactly what you want, and you've got to explain to us how you will do it in practice, in particular when it comes to the Northern Irish border.
But what could that be? I mean, what could he possibly find that would be an alternative, that would be a workable alternative, not only for the European Union, but also for everybody in Ireland to agree on?
We just don't know. We don't know. We don't know whether or not... We've been told that the technological advances are not quite there yet. So you can't have a frictionless border. You can't have an open border, which is all managed by cameras and reporting back and forth. Unless there is some kind of border there, we just don't know what it's going to look like. And we don't know... And, of course, the DUP are saying they won't accept certain things. The Irish government is saying this won't accept certain things. So this is, you know... For as much as Boris Johnson has had a brilliant start in government, and long may it continue, may I add, I do actually think that he's facing pretty similar problems to the problems Theresa May faced. She is faced with a problem which was, I can't get this deal through Parliament. His parliamentary arithmetic is pretty much the same. She's facing the problem where it's the Northern Irish backstop that is the sticking point, and Boris Johnson's facing exactly the same. And all we've done really is just extended this period of time through to October the 31st. Boris Johnson has made it very, very clear. I interviewed Ian Duncan Smith on Talk Radio a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me very clearly, if Boris Johnson thinks he's going for an extension, or he thinks he's going to try and recut Theresa May's deal, there is a large percentage of the Conservative Party that are going to absolutely refuse that. We were told when he stood for leader that he was not going to go down that route, and we would consider that to be a betrayal. And so they're kind of holding his feet to the fire, really, on this.
Well, they sort of are, but not only are they doing that, everybody else is doing it as well. He's getting pressure from the Irish government, not surprisingly, getting pressure, obviously, from Brussels, getting pressure from probably the DUP in the north. He's getting pressure from the SNP in Scotland. He's getting pressure from the Labour Party, and I think he has to just hold the line and basically go until October the 31st, no matter come hell or high water, and just go and just leave, because no matter what agreement he tries to come up with, somebody's going to object to it.
And he doesn't have the maths to get it over the line. Yeah. So you only need a small proportion of people to kick off, especially in Parliament, and you're not able to achieve that deal that you want. So I always thought that Boris Johnson wanted to achieve a deal, because that is the smoothest way to carry on, and you don't necessarily have to face a general election. You don't necessarily have to face a vote of no confidence. It doesn't look like that is yet on the table. But you know what we've always said? The Europeans like to deal at 11 o'clock, to midnight, 5 minutes to midnight type thing. So who knows what might come out of the bag?
But we're into the following day now, because we had the 5 minutes to midnight on March the 29th, and we didn't get anything there. But that was, as I believe it, because Theresa May didn't really want anything different. She kind of was hoping that, I don't know what she was hoping. I don't know where she was at the end of it. I think she just didn't really realise quite how hopeless her position was. But we've seen us walking up to midnight and nothing happening. So there's nothing necessarily that they can do, I don't think, which is going to jeopardise what they see as Ireland's, independence from Britain.
This is the biggest game of poker you will witness in your career, Mike. Yeah. I'm telling you now.
No, I've been involved in some pretty big games of poker in my career, I can tell you.
I'm telling you now, this is a massive standoff, and we don't know how it's going to end. We truthfully don't know where it's going to end. And I think they're twin-tracking scenarios at number 10, which is they don't quite know how it's going to end either. And so they've got, plan of action A, plan of action B. The thing is with Theresa May is the Europeans always knew that she was never going to leave the European Union with no deal. And therefore they knew that they could string her along. They knew that they could push her. They knew that they could put some things that they knew were quite unpalatable into her withdrawal deal, because she was never going to jump for the alternative. They know that that's very, very different with Boris Johnson. And I think his plan of action will be, well, hopefully my attitude towards this will help to focus minds somewhat.
Yes, indeed. And talking of focusing minds, what are you making of Dominic Cummings and his kind of rod of iron that he's ruling Downing Street with?
Well, you say that because I've experienced a few rod of irons myself at Downing Street, Mike, and so the building sometimes does have to be run.
I think it's exactly the way it should be run. Of course, it should be run that way. I think it's great.
But I think you should match the fear with the talent and the intellect, and I think that Dominic Cummings does that in a way that maybe some of my previous colleagues didn't. And whenever I speak to people that have worked with Dominic Cummings in the past, who are working alongside him now, they say to me very clearly, look, right, you know where you stand, you know what he wants of you. He's very, very clear. He's backed up by data. He's done a lot of hard work. He's incredibly intelligent. And do you know what? I don't mind people saying to me, I really would like this done, if I think to myself, if I respect them. And the problem in the past has been that often people go around throwing their weight around at number 10, and you don't respect a word that they say, and you think to yourself, well, that comes from you got out of bed this morning and thought this was a good idea. It doesn't come from any basis other than that. Dominic Cummings directs people with I've done the hard work, I've sat in the focus groups, I've listened to people from Hull to Middlesbrough to Ramsgate. I've been there. I understand what they're looking for from this government, and I am absolutely determined to deliver. We should not waste a day. I quite like that about him.
I very much like it about him, and I'm hearing all sorts of interesting stories from inside of there, that some of the special advisors are getting a good kicking whenever they step out of line, and also the leaking needs to stop as well. It's interesting now that all the leaks seem to be coming from the disaffected former cabinet minister side of things, rather than from actually inside 10 Downing Street itself.
Oh, my favourites are when you read a couple of hours after a meeting's taken place, or sometimes in some cases a few minutes, that Dominic Cummings has given everyone a stern talking to about leaking, and he said the following, and you're like, well, okay, you're leaking the row over the leaking. This is ridiculous. It's got to stop. I mean, I had a few leakers when I was there at number 10, and I kind of pull them in and have a conversation with them and say to them, look, we pretty much know it's you. You've got to pack it in. I know the journalists you're speaking to. It got utterly out of control. Once the genie's out of the bottle, it's very hard to get it back in again.
And I think that was the case with Theresa May. She had absolutely no sort of cabinet cohesion. She had no loyalty, really, for anyone, because people just weren't loyal to her, apart from the ones who had been with her sort of from the beginning, because they were all after her job at the end of the day.
Well, there's a high level of loyalty towards Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
They actually do care about him. They've got his back. They don't want him to get, if this is a last chance saloon, if this goes wrong, the Conservatives are probably out for a generation, and therefore their careers are at risk. His potential premiership will be short-lived, and they're going to be handed the keys to a Marxist government. And that's their view, and therefore they have no choice but to row him behind. But, they're not doing it because they're forced to. They actually want it to be successful. So the Conservatives I'm speaking to around Westminster during the summer holidays are saying, look, I don't want no deal. I'm frightened about it. I'm a bit concerned about it. But at the end of the day, I want this to work. I am backing him 100% because I want this to work. And therefore, anything I can do to row in the right direction, play my part, I'm there, I'm willing, I'm ready to go. And you just didn't have that with Theresa May. And so we've got to be in a much better place now as a country, in the Conservative Party, than they were in a few weeks ago. And if you look at the Labour Party, they are utterly divided over the issue of Brexit. And they want to hope they don't have a general election soon, because they can't even get together over a manifesto. So they are in real problems themselves. If you speak to any Labour MP in the sidelines, they tell you we're doomed unless Corbyn goes. If Corbyn does actually go and decide to step aside because he can't do any kind of national unity government or whatever it is they're proposing, then that's when Boris Johnson gets a run for his money, because with a replacement Labour leader, they are back in the game and anything can happen.
That's very possible, but certainly a national unity government under Jeremy Corbyn who can't unite his own party, a pretty laughable idea. And one final thing, what do you make of the old Lib Dems, eh? Every time they literally get a sniff of the barmaid's apron, they're off. Again, calling for, we're ready to return to government, we're ready to run the country. They set themselves up to have a shadow cabinet. I mean, are they having a laugh? Hey?
The thing is, though, is that the one key thing that Jo Swinson's got going for her, it sounds terrible.
She's not Vince Cable, is about the only thing she's got going for her.
You look to the left and you've got Jeremy Corbyn, you look slightly to the right, you've got Boris Johnson. There may be a swathe of people, especially female voters, that might go, well, I'm not too keen on either of those, and therefore I'm going to go right through the middle. I don't have to read her policies, I don't have to listen to her, I'm not interested in knowing what they really stand for. I'm just going to go for the alternative, really.
Yeah.
And so I think she could sweep up quite a lot of votes that way.
Yeah, but they still come second more than they come first, and that doesn't mean more seats, does it? That's the
exactly.
problem.
And you take the words right out of my mouth, Mike, that you can get a load of votes, but it doesn't get you over the line. And the way our system works is that you've really got to go some in order to win some of those key seats. So I think that what you'll see in the next election is kind of the polarised votes in various different places, which is kind of in colour blocks around the country. The Lib Dems will probably take some of the southwest in the way that the Conservatives have built this blue wall over the last few years. I think that's going to be smashed, and I think the Lib Dems probably gain some of those seats back. But, you've got to really go some. I think the reason why Jo Swinson is interesting is because she could be the kingmaker. We could be looking at a coalition government again. We are probably moving more to the European style of governing rather than the UK, ironic considering we're leaving the EU, in terms of fractured government.
Yeah.
And so I think that possibly she could be in the room making some decisions in the future.
And do you see an election being called before October the 31st, or are you one of those like me who thinks it's more likely after?
I've always thought in the last couple of months that we're probably going to go straight after, not long after, because you actually want that parliamentary arithmetic to change. So I'm sticking with that. I think it's going to be after the 31st, and Boris Johnson will do absolutely everything he can to get it over the line, because he doesn't want to face a Brexit party telling the nation that they promised that they would leave the European Union by the 31st of October, and that's not going to happen. And so I think it's going to go afterwards. I think it's going to be shortly afterwards. It's not just the numbers that Boris Johnson needs to change in Parliament, it's the makeup of Parliament he needs to change. There is a number of Tory MPs that are not his type of Tory. They will not sign up to his type of manifesto. His view will be, if I can get rid of them and I can get them replaced by people who are more, my style of government and what I want to achieve and what I want to do, much more harder Brexiteers, then I can change the makeup in Parliament and I can do the things I really want to do over the next 5 years.
Fantastic. And great to talk to you again, Katie. And all I want to say, I'll leave you this final message. If, in fact, you're going to gallivant off down to Nice again, like you do every year, make sure you do some carbon offsetting with Elton John's favourite carbon offsetting company.
Don't get me started on any of that. You haven't got enough time for me to bang on about it.
Well, we'll hear you on Talk Radio again soon. Thanks very much indeed. Katie Perrier, former communications chief in Downing Street with Theresa May, of course. Very, very wise woman. She believes, like I do, there'll be an election probably after October the 31st, because that way Boris Johnson rather neatly avoids the Brexit party. If he has it before, there's a problem.